This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with frontman RYAN CAUDLE of the progressive rock act Sound&SHAPE. If I knew absolutely nothing about Sound&SHAPE, how would you describe the band's music to me?
I usually just say rock and roll, but of course people always want qualifiers with that. So I don't like to compare us to other bands, so I usually just say, sometimes heavy, sometimes pretty and atmospheric, always melodic. We're not screamy at all. But yeah, just rock and roll.
I'd have to agree with that after listening to your latest album, Pillars of Creation. It's a self-release. It came out on May 24th. It's getting fantastic reviews, so you must be happy about that.
Yeah, it's been great, actually. You always kind of like brace yourself for what people are going to say about it. And, a lot of artists will be like, oh, I don't read the reviews. I think probably 99.9% of artists read the reviews, even if they say they don't. And, you got to take them all with grains of salt, even the good ones, but yeah, it's been really positive across the board. And what means more than what critics are saying, is what fans are saying, and everybody who has reached out to us has loved it. And, live, it's been getting a great reaction, and that's what really means the most. So
what was a little surprising to me is that you recorded the album in 8 days in your home studio. I guess recording an album in a quick time frame isn't so surprising. I would imagine that the actual writing of the album took a little longer than 8 days.
Yeah, I started writing. So I'm kind of always writing. I've always got, several songs sort of in various stages. But I really started writing like in earnest, I want to say probably beginning of last year, maybe, because I knew that at some point, in 23, we were going to do the album. And then we started demoing in the summer, like really demoing. And then, as always happens, I kind of wrote a batch towards the end of that, where some of the songs that ended up on the record actually like edged out some other songs that we had earmarked for the album. So yeah. So it was a process, but yeah, we recorded it very quickly.
So tell me a little bit of why you decided on naming the album Pillars of Creation. You do have the intro track that's called Pillars of Creation, but it's more of a little segue. So how did you end up settling on that for the album's title?
That's a good question. I'm always, looking for cool titles and stuff, and hearing little bits of phrases on, TV or reading them in books, or kind of, and, filing them away, or, things will just kind of come to me. And I honestly can't remember where I heard that phrase, but I Googled it to make sure, it wasn't like some huge band's, giant album or something. And the first thing that came up was the photo that I think it's the Hubble telescope took. And it's this gorgeous photo of the cosmos, and I think maybe another band years and years ago called an EP or something Pillars of Creation, and I was like, well, it's a really grand title, and this album is going to be pretty grand in scope. So I was like, yep, pretty much that was, most of our albums kind of go through 2 or 3 titles before I settle on, okay, this is what it's going to be called. But this was, I think, maybe 2 months before we even started, it was Pillars of Creation from day one. And I knew that I wanted to bookend the record with an intro and an outro. And I was immediately like, okay, first song is going to be Pillars of Creation, because it kind of, the song itself sets a mood, and the title sort of, it's the beginning of something. So
you have a couple singles out, or we used to call them singles. Now they're more like promotional songs, but let's talk a little bit about them. Why don't you tell me a little bit of the inspiration behind Running the Fairy Tale?
So that song, it was actually one of the later songs I wrote in that like last batch. And we worked it up at rehearsal, and once it was done, we kind of all looked at each other and went, okay, that's got to be the first, the single. It's really fun to play. The lyrics are, I always try to write where it's going to work on a few different levels, but that song's just kind of about, like we're sort of sold this idea about how interpersonal relationships and romances should be this certain thing that fits into this little, box and all these parameters. And, when you actually get in those situations, you realize very quickly that it's not like that, like, relationships are tough, and they're as terrible as they are wonderful, and they're messy, and they're not easy to deal with and stuff. And, you can get overwhelmed by that. The reality is very different from the fantasy. So that's kind of what that main line in the chorus says, are you mad at love for ruining the fairy tale? Which is like, I'm saying, like, excuse me, are you upset at the reality of what love is for ruining that sort of fantasy that you had built up in your head? And I don't expect anybody to really like sit there and, and really, ponder that while they're listening. But that was uh, where the starting off point for the lyrics.
Was that your significant others in the music video?
No. Those are a couple of friends of ours, Ginger and Kristen. Hi. They probably won't watch this, but yeah, no, those are friends of ours.
Okay. You have another song out. It's called "How to Talk to Ghosts." If you want to get into the inspiration behind that one.
Yeah, that one is kind of about feeling, just I think everybody kind of goes through it. I was a very weird, awkward teenager. And when you are a weird, awkward teenager, you kind of feel like you're the only weird, awkward teenager. And then you realize years down the road that everybody was. And I mean, I'm sure not everybody, but the vast majority of people. And it's kind of about like sort of feeling, isolated while you're still in sort of a big crowd, and like, um, feeling lonely while you're still you still have, you still have people around, and there's people to talk to, but you're not quite comfortable in your own skin, and how your relationship with the people around you sort of impacts your own relationship with yourself. And I have an 11-year-old son, and I see how he has to deal with the politics of fifth grade, or now going into sixth grade. And just to sort of, I was just kind of ruminating on like how your relationship with the outside world ultimately impacts your relationship with yourself, and how trying to take control of your relationship with yourself can really help your relationship with the outside world, and trying to like sort of, how do you like reconcile the two to not let one sort of overtake the other?
Well, does fronting a band kind of change your perspective on something like that? Because I think there's sort of a shift. I used to be in a cover band. There's sort of a shift at how people look at you when you were perceiving yourself as the awkward little teenager, and then when you front a band, people kind of look at you different.
That's a very good question. I'm still painfully introverted, to be honest. So it's kind of strange. It's like, you walk on stage, and the valve opens, and you play the show, and then you've got all the feelings and the emotions of playing the show, and tapping into all the things that I sing about in all these songs. And then, we're still a very small unit, so we don't travel with a tour manager. We don't have a merch guy. So when we're out, we've been, lucky enough to play a lot of bigger shows lately. And so we have this ritual where we'll get everything off stage really fast. And while the other two guys are packing up, I run to the merch table to start, trying to get some merch sales. But that also means that I have to be the one who is, there and being social. So it's like, the longer I'm there, the valve is just closing. So and so by the end of the night, it's just like, okay, I've done it. I enjoy talking to all the people. I absolutely love meeting fans. And I even feel strange saying the word like fans because, you don't want to presume that these people are your fans, but I mean, they're people who enjoy our music. They've seen the show and they really love it and they want to buy the music and take it home. So I've gotten more comfortable with saying the word fan. And that's the best part of the night is meeting them and, having conversations with them and, really that's, learning that they've gotten something out of that and that they're going to continue to get something out of it because they've bought the vinyl or they bought the CD and they're going to take it home. Um, and it's something I've definitely had to, actively learn to be better at. And, meeting the more people we get to play to and the more people we meet, sort of the easier it is. So it's like self-therapy.
There you go.
Mhm.
Are you guys planning a third single from the album?
Well, so Ruining the Fairy Tale was first, and then a song called Don't Make Me Make Believe came out about a month later. And then How to Talk to Ghosts was the track that dropped the day the album came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Don't Make Me Believe?
So Don't Make Me Make Believe, it's kind of similar subject matter to How to Talk to Ghosts. It's almost kind of the inverse though. It's more of a like, not letting an outside perspective influence you too much. It's like sort of getting the armor built first, and then kind of going out in the world, like really establishing yourself, like who you are to yourself, um, and then kind of presenting that to the world because I think truly finding out who you are as a person is probably it's a lifelong thing, um, but you don't want to have no idea about yourself before you go out there because you don't want to. I don't know. It's tough to explain. I feel like I could ramble for hours, but you don't want to. All of us are amalgams of our environment and what we're taught and what we're around and all that. But our we're seeing it more and more in society of where that can really go wrong. Um, Especially in our country, there's so much division and there's a lot of real hate out there right now, and I think that's more a product of environment and being taught that kind of thinking because nobody's born with hate. Um, I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors. I'm Jewish, and my grandparents and great grandparents and great aunts and great uncles. So I have obviously it didn't happen to me, but I think I have a little bit of a unique perspective on looking at all that because I heard firsthand stories. And you're not just born with those sort of outlooks, like those things are taught. So I think that um, our society as a whole is sort of being bombarded with things of all kind, and there's really a lack of sense of self, uh, first of all. So when you get those things, you're being fed so much that you just kind of latch on to whatever's going to get you into that group. So you have a group of friends and you have a group you can be with and you belong. So um, it's real easy to sort of kind of follow whatever, regardless of what you actually truly believe. Um, so I think that's dangerous in a lot of ways, which that's a lot to put into a 3.5 minute rock and roll song, but that's kind of where I was going with that one.
Trying to create a caricature of ourselves so we can be accepted by everyone and all,
Right,
without having anything that we actually stand up for.
right, and it's the sad thing. The sad thing is that's often at the exclusion of one subsect of people, regardless of what that is, and that is the dangerous part.
Right. You got Grammy-winning producer GREASY, WIL ANSPACH. I'm not sure about that, but You got Greasy Will to work on the album in
Hmm.
your home studio. How did you end up with that opportunity?
So we were originally supposed to do the record with somebody else, and that ended up not working out. And we had been trying to figure out what we were going to do for a couple of months, and I had a conversation with Will, and he was like, "Well, I'd love to do it, if we can figure out timeline and budget and all that stuff." So we just talked, and we were able to figure it out. And we originally thought we were going to have a little bit more time, but then he had to do like he got put on a project back in LA. So the time went a little bit shorter. But we were like, let's just do it. And we were like, budgetarily, uh, it'll be a lot better if we can just do it at our spot. So he brought some mics. We rented a couple of things, borrowed some mics, and yeah, we just did it. And I'm, super proud of how it turned out. And there's something to be said, of course, for recording in a big studio because you're going to get what big studios offer, but there's a certain relaxed sort of, um, where we weren't constantly. I mean, we were looking at the clock because we knew we didn't have a lot of time, but we weren't like worrying about like, oh, there goes $100. Oh, there goes $100. Like because we were in a big studio. And the only tough part was having to do all the vocals in 2 days. That was a little trying. I was absolutely exhausted by the end of that. But yeah, we made it work.
And of course, Will has produced Metallica, Muse, Chili Peppers, so it's a pretty big deal having him work on your album.
Yeah, well, he was engineer on those, but yeah, he's worked with a lot of people. So it's always a very, very humbling when somebody's got a resume like that and then they agree to work with you, because when you're sitting on your bed watching TV writing these songs, you don't think that anybody who's worked with anybody of note is gonna, have their hands on your song. So it's great.
Tell me the story behind the artwork for Pillars of Creation. You got a lot going on there, much like this Alan Parsons Project album I got behind me.
Oh, I see that. So it was done by a guy named Gareth Halliday. He's a British artist, and I absolutely love his stuff. He's killer. And so I'm a huge Noel Gallagher fan. Like he's one of my big idols. And Gareth had done a bunch of artwork for Noel from I want to say 2017 to about 2021-ish. Like he did his artwork for his third solo record, Who Built the Moon, and then all of his singles from that record. And then Noel put out a bunch of EPs in 2019, I believe, and he did all the artwork for that. And I thought, when we were going to do the art or getting ready to do this one, I was like, I'm just going to see if it would be affordable, if he would be into it, whatever. So I sent him a message and just on Facebook one day, and I was like, "Hey, I play in a really tiny band from the States. Like, is this something you would be interested in?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." Very sweet guy, incredible artist. And he was like, "Do you have any of the new music to send?" So I sent him a couple of the demos, and then he had me send him the lyrics, and then he had me like pick out because I tend to write in sort of images sometimes. So he had me pick out some of the images, like line lyrics, images in the lyrics that I liked. So I did that, and then I think he sent me. I want to say that was the first full on like he sent me a couple of like ideas, like do you like the color scheme I'm going with, and kind of like this. Um, but then that was, I believe, the first full on like, hey, what do you think about this? And all of us were like, yep, that's it. Like that's great. And I love it. I mean, it looks to me like a classic record cover, like something you'd see, like on a list of like classic record covers. So
And you got some cool vinyl collections to go with it. I saw
mhm.
you had like a marbly blue one, a black one, and you got the vinyl collector's dream, the mystery vinyl.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
You're currently in the middle of leg one of your Pillars of Creation tour opening for King's X. How's it
Yep.
been going so far?
It's great, man. We love those guys so much. They've been absolutely wonderful to us. We become buddies, which is a dream because they're absolute legends. And to have those guys on your side, I mean, it's just it's validating, for sure. Like, and it's I mean, they're just legends. They've not only been around forever, but they're still at the top of their game. And getting to watch them every night is incredible. Like I could watch Ty play guitar for hours. I mean, I do. I sit there and watch as much as I can every night, and Doug's still playing great and singing great, and Jerry's perfect. And they've taken great care of us, and their crowds love us. It's been a really big help, and um, I mean, we've definitely been in situations before where we've opened for bands, and the crowds have been nonplussed to say the least. I like to think we can win over every crowd, but sometimes it's not the case. um, but it's a great situation, and we're very very lucky. We just did Texas with them, which was great. Earlier in the year, we did like New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We're about to do Southeast with them, and then we're doing some more New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
I think it's a perfect match of music, quite honestly.
Yeah, yeah, it is because we don't sound just like them, but we sound enough like them to make sense, and we have a lot of the same shared influences. Like Ty and I are big Beatles heads. Like the Beatles are my favorite band of all time, and they're Ty's. So Ty and I'll sit in the dressing room and talk Beatles for 2 hours. If we get the chance. So
You had an album listening party on 523 at the and a beer collaboration with the
hmm
Black Abbey Brewing Company. Tell me a little bit about this beer.
so that's actually kind of a funny story. We were talking about what merch to get for this tour, um, and a bunch of people had told us to get like beer koozies, which we actually still haven't gotten. But and I said if we're going to do that, we should have it say Pilsners of Creation instead of Pillars of Creation. And I told our marketing guy at the company we signed with that, and he was like, "What you should do is find a beer, a brewery to do a beer collab with." And it turns out that Ben, our drummer, is good friends with Carl, the guy that owns Black Abbey, who is a sweetheart of a guy. Carl, if you're watching this. And he was like, "Yeah, would love to do it." So we went early one morning and made a couple of beers with him. We made oh, it would probably drive him nuts if I got the name wrong, but it was an old ale slash barley wine, which ended up very, very boozy and very strong. Both ended up very strong. And then a stout um, as well. And I don't really drink, and so I drank about that much of each and was like, "Yep, I'm good." Like, because I think they both ended up at like 8.6% or something like that. But that was a lot of fun. We had a good crowd out and played the album on vinyl. It sounded great, and everybody had a really good time.
Do you have leg two of the tour planned out after leg one finishes up?
We're in the middle of that right now, trying to figure that out. I know we're taking August off, um, and then we're working on September and beyond right now.
Sticking to the States? Or are you going to try to get over into Europe?
We'd love to do Europe in 25. That's definitely something that we've talked about. Because just sort of looking at raw numbers, it's the record's actually doing pretty well overseas. So we'd definitely like to get over there. We've always wanted to go. We all think we would do pretty well over there. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
Now, do I have my information correct that Sound and Shape goes all the way back to 2005?
2006, maybe 2005. I'm old. My memory is funky, but yeah, about that. Yeah. So
And then
I played in another band here in Nashville, and when that band ended, me and the drummer from that band got a couple other guys and just kind of transitioned over, and basically did everything wrong for years and years and years, and had members come and go, and were variously active and inactive and that kind of stuff, and it's it's tough because when you have that much of a history and you're not a big band, people tend to like be like, well, why aren't you big? And it's like, well, if I knew the answer, then we'd be having this conversation in my gold-plated hot tub, like. But we really, when this lineup got together, me, Ben, and Pat, like that to me is the band. And the only reason there wasn't a name change is because everybody on our team was like, you'd be insane to change the name of a band that has that kind of history. There's records out, like, you have relationships with promoters and people like that. So, we got a booking agent, we got management, we got a lawyer and all that stuff right around the time that this lineup came together. So, like this is the band. So I kind of look at Disaster Medicine, our last record, as like our collective first record. But yeah, the name has been around for quite a few years. So there is a back catalog.
Would you still endorse that back catalog, or would you say, yeah, maybe check it out, maybe not?
No, I would endorse parts of it more than I would the others. But that's my own personal taste. I mean, artistically, I tend to move really quickly.
Yeah.
So there are some things I feel are better than others because, like, we started out really, really proggy, like very, very proggy, like almost like inaccessibly proggy. Um, and so the first couple of records are like that, and then got kind of reined in by some of the people we were working with, and then started to sort of burst out again. And then I feel like, you know, because we've worked with various managers over the years and various people coming in on the business end, trying to like, contain things and uh, at different points, I would concede different parts of us or me artistically, which, but there was always parts where I wouldn't. And it's like, you either kind of have to like go whole hog in selling out, or whole hog in sticking to your guns. You can't really do part of either. So once I just said, screw it, we're going to do what we want to do, which is basically when Pat and Ben joined. That's when things started to really like get better. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting listen. You can definitely kind of see the trajectory and how my writing's changed and how it's gotten better, and sort of what I was listening to at the time. But our last record, Disaster Medicine, has my 1000%. Like that's really Sound and Shape's first proper record to me. But the rest of the catalog's there. It's got its gems sort of in different spots. But if you're a completist, it's on our website. You can buy it all.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
Before I let you go, what are the origins of the band's name, Sound and Shape?
That's a good one. So our original drummer Jerry, him and I were super tight, super close friends. He's actually Bob Dylan's drummer now. Yeah, him and I lived together, spent like 23 and a half hours a day together. And we were trying our hardest to come up with a band name that wasn't terrible. And him and I both had like, those school notebooks just full of the worst band names possible. The worst, like just terrible. Um, and we were about to go make our first record. We did our first record in Paramus, New Jersey. And we were like, we're not going to do the record without a name. Like, we're not getting in the van to drive to New Jersey without a name. We ended up driving to New Jersey without a name. Came back, still didn't have a name. I think we played a couple of shows with our old band name just because we had them booked, And finally, he calls me one day, and he was driving in the car. I remember this very clearly. And he calls me, and I could barely hear him. And he's like, "What about Sound and Shape?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "What about Sound and Shape?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, for the band name." And I was like, "Sound and Shape." And I was like, "Well, that's probably the least objectionable one that we have out of like these 4,000 band names." And he's like, "Well, what do you think?" And I was like, "Well, we're supposed to go on tour in like, 3 weeks, and we have to give him a name." Sure. So that was it. And we were like, it'll fit okay. It's like symmetrical, kind of on a sticker and fine. So yeah, that was literally it.
Is there a reason there's no spaces in between the ampersand?
We just wanted it stylized, which comes back to kick us in the ass all the time because online there's three different ways you can do it. It's sound and shape with the ampersand, no spaces. And then there's sound space, ampersand space, shape. And then there's sound, the word and shape. So yeah, so it's led to some weird things. And for a long time, people didn't even get the name right. We've even shown up recently and the name will be like spelled wrong on like a chalkboard or something.
Who would have known back then?
Yeah, probably would have gone with something easier, like a one-word name or something.
Well, that's all I got for you today, Ryan. The new Sound and Shape album, Pillars of Creation, out now. You're out on tour with King's X, still going strong there. And I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me about all things
Oh, thanks for
Pillars
having
of
me.
Creation and Sound and Shape. And I wish you the best of luck with it all.
Appreciate it very much, man.